awesome game Thursday night down in Tuscaloosa. The final score, Purdue 87, Alabama 80. 3 days after the Boilermakers were demoted from number 1 to number 2 in the AP poll, Matt Painter's team entered Coleman Coliseum and left with what is arguably now the best victory anybody has so far this season. They beat a top 10 team on the road. More specifically, they went on the road and beat a top 10 team that had just 5 days earlier won at St. John's. Braden Smith was tremendous, 29 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists in 34 minutes. Despite being roughly my height, he grabbed at least 3 more rebounds than every single Alabama player. Norlander,
hello.
It's good to see you on this Friday morning. Special shouts to Oasis. What'd you make of what Purdue did at Alabama last night?
Yeah, slip inside the eye of your mind. You know, you might find a better place to play. That was Tuscaloosa for Purdue on Thursday. Really fun game. You mentioned the rebounds for Smith. Oates had a comment after. He said, you know, he was praising what Smith was doing. He said our leading rebounder had 4. You know, so just a really good. There's a number of different angles I want to take here, and we got plenty of time because it was the only notable game of the past 2 nights. But Braden Smith having the kind of performance on the road that reaffirmed his preseason National Player of the Year status, I think, is the biggest takeaway. But there's a lot here, just to see him step up the way he did, and he did so despite having a 6-minute stretch in the first half where he got sat. And had he had a typical normal game, like his stat line would have even been bigger. But the way he commanded the floor, getting Trey Kaufman-Renn back, obviously that's also huge. And Renn having an immediately impactful game was major. Purdue gets a 7-point margin, but the game had 22 lead changes. It had 14 ties. It would have had a closer margin if Alabama could have scored in the final minute and 40, but it didn't. It was 80-80, and then Purdue had the final 7 points overall. It was the program's first non-conference road win against a top 10 opponent since Louisville in 1982. Good on Purdue, which has managed to beat Alabama, oh, by the way, 3 times in as many years. 3 seasons in a row, these programs have played in the non-conference, and all 3 times Purdue has won. In those games, Braden Smith averaged 24.3 points, 7.3 assists, 6.0 rebounds. He'd take Alabama every month if he could. But that's not how it goes. I got some more goodies, but I'll toss it back to you. What were your thoughts on what transpired down south on Thursday night?
Well, first, Nate Oates can't get Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn out of school fast enough because them two have been destroying the Crimson Tide for the past couple of seasons, and in Braden's case, the past 3. 29.7 rebounds, 4 assists. Incredible stat line. The 4 assists, that's no way to break Bobby Hurley's all-time assist record. That's going to get you off pace a little bit.
I tried to tell you.
but man, it's not just the box score. I mean, you can look at that and see he was, great. But it's just the way he controlled the entire game. I mean, particularly in the second half, when they just give him a ball screen and he just gets where he wants to go, and he's putting defenders on his back, and he's drawing fouls in the final minute. He's just in complete control, and I know that this freshman class is amazing, and by the time we get to the end of it, we could be in a Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, A.J. DeBonsa, Koa Pete, Caleb Wilson debate for National Player of the Year. But this is the preseason National Player of the Year, and he reminded everybody last night of why. He is arguably the best point guard in the country. I think most people would absolutely label him that way, but I'll leave some wiggle room. And he is running what is arguably also the best college basketball team in the country, even if AP voters, punished them a little bit early Monday morning.
Yeah, that was, I think we talked about that on the show. I definitely talked about it on HQ. Purdue got twice as many first place votes as Houston, but with the way that the points are tallied, when the ballots are sent in, team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Houston narrowly jumped Purdue by, I think, 3 total points, not 3 votes, 3 points. Be interesting to see if Purdue can rip that number 1 ranking back, regardless of what happens to Houston. Foreshadowing, we'll get to that in the final 4 and 1. Couple more things from the game. Purdue destroyed Alabama on the glass. Two very different kinds of styles, for sure. Two different kinds of coaches. That's our poll question right now. If you could have one coach for the next 5 years, who would you take, Matt Painter or Nate Oates? We'll get to those results in just a little bit. Let that cook and let our viewers chime in on that poll question. But Alabama only getting 28 total rebounds to Purdue's 52. Then if you go to rebound percentage, which usually tells the story even more accurately, Purdue got 82.5% of their defensive rebounds, so Alabama's missed shots. And then on their own missed shots, Purdue grabbed 47.5% of those attempts. It did this. It won. It didn't have a single fast break point in the game, which typically, not always, but if you've got a person who should be considered the best point guard in the sport, as valuable as anyone else, to win a game on the road against a top 10 opponent with someone that's that in command of an offense and not get a single fast break point is just wild stuff. 8 Alabama players made at least one 3-pointer last night. Each team took 66 shots, but 44 of Alabama's were from beyond the arc. They shot 36%. Purdue was more accurate with, not quite as many shots. Trey Kaufman-Renn having his debut and going off was the other part of it. Smith was the most important player on the floor, but Kaufman-Renn was the game started and he was champing at the bit. He was an absolute beast. Credit to ESPN Stats and Information, which sent this out late on Thursday. TKR is the third player in the last 30 seasons to have at least 15 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists in an AP top 10 matchup. Not even necessarily on the road, but he was here. Joe Forte, which is a great throwback. Joe Forte, one of my favorite players ever. He did it in 2001 for Carolina. And then Tim Duncan did it in 96 for Wake Forest. So Kaufman-Renn doing what he did, like as the game was playing out, not knowing who was going to win, when he was such an immediately impactful player, GP, last night, I'm watching this, I'm going, okay, is Purdue really going to have 2 of the 10 best players in the sport this season? Because that was on the table going in. We see TKR immediately just becoming a force. And if that's going to be the case, then, Purdue's preseason #1 ranking is going to age extremely well. I think Purdue has the best win of the first 2 weeks of the season in the sport. You could have said it was Alabama, but Alabama just lost at home to Purdue. Bama got their win against St. John's. This was a true road environment. Louisville's win over Kentucky was really nice, but that one was at home. Arizona got a really nice win to open the season against Florida. That was on a neutral floor. No one has a road win, I think, of the level of Purdue. Again, we're not even 2 full weeks in, but really, really impressed there. What else stood out to you from the game?
Well, first, just I agree with you. I think they've got now the best win of any team in the country, and that means that barring an Akron upset this weekend,
right,
Purdue is going to be 4-0 with the best win in the country on Monday and still might not be #1, even though they were preseason #1. This is wildly unusual stuff. I would encourage I don't really care. The AP voters can do whatever they want. I'm over that. Life's too short. But they looked like they reminded folks again, just like Braden Smith reminded folks why he was the preseason National Player of the Year. Purdue reminded folks why they were the preseason #1 team in the AP poll. The offensive rebounding was obviously incredible. 19 offensive boards. If you remember, Purdue was top 10 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage in both years that Zach Edey won the Wooden Award. And the second he left the program and then Daniel Jacobson got hurt early last season, they really struggled to maintain any sort of advantage on the offensive glass. I think they dropped to 123rd in the country in offensive rebounding percentage last season. Last night, tremendous again, and some of that is because Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think, is playing with another big instead of being the big, and he's better in this role. I like him here. The way he was very early, like it took him no time to get comfortable, even though he had missed the first 2 games of the season. He's catching the ball at the elbow. He's facing up. He's got that little jump hook that looks like is reliable. He's just an awesome college player. And 19, 15, and 5 last night, you put the historical standards on it. 26-8 against Alabama last season, so he gave it to him 2 years in a row. Nate Oates in his postgame last night talked about Purdue's defensive approach. They really packed it in and said, all right, Alabama, if you want to take 44 threes, take 44 threes. We're going to trust that you're not going to make a good enough percentage of them, but we're going to try not to give you anything at the rim. We're going to try to take away the driving lanes, force you to kick it out and make shots. And they just didn't make enough of them. I mean, they made 16. That's a big raw number, but 16 of 44 is not the. I mean, it's a fine percentage, but it obviously wasn't enough to get them there. But they can get it points from beyond the arc in a lot of different places, as you pointed out. I think they had 10 made threes in the first half, which was interesting. 10 made threes in the first half, and you're down a bucket. That's not normal. Mm-hmm. But then 6 different Alabama players, by my count, made a three in the first 16 minutes of the game. So they've got guys who can shoot it. Last night, the percentage was a little lower than I think they'd like to be. And with the way Braden Smith was able to control things down the stretch, Purdue gets out of there with a big win.
And if you're watching, you can see the box score here. LeBaron Philon, 11 points, 1 of 6 from deep. Box score does tell the story here, just not the level of impact that I frankly expected. He is too good of a player, too fast of a player, too good of an athlete. Now that speaks to Purdue's preparedness, Painter's coaching, all of that. I just thought he would be more impactful. Aiden Holloway showed up. He had 21 points, had a number of big buckets as the game went along. Taylor Bowen had some nice moments there. Aiden Sherrill as well. But I thought Philon was going to show up bigger than he did. It just didn't happen. And the kind of game for a sophomore. Okay, you had a big time opponent in your building. It didn't go your way. Good learning opportunity, and Alabama's going to have so many games. In fact, Alabama is just loaded right now in terms of their schedule. They might have a stretch here that is unmatched in the sport this season, Parrish. So they just played St. John's. They get Purdue. Next is Illinois. Then it's Gonzaga at the Players Era. They'll play UNLV in their second game in the Players Era, and then they'll have another game, which will be a high major opponent. And then after that, they will play Clemson. So count them up. Johnny's, Purdue, Illinois, Gonzaga. We'll nudge UNLV out of there. An undetermined Players Era and Clemson. That is 6 out of 7 games in the non-conference against high major opponents. And not just that, all except 2 of them are away from their building. I don't think there's a team in God bless Nate Oates. I mean, that's madman scheduling, but he's just not scared. Purdue is 5 at Ken Palm. Illinois is 4. Gonzaga is 3. That's the next 3 opponents as well. On the whole, maybe UConn, a couple other teams might have a tougher non-conference schedule overall. But in terms of a stretch right now, like Alabama is in it. They're not going to get out of November with fewer than at least, they've got 1. They're going to have at least 2. And if you told me it was 3 or 4, I'd believe you. But because of the way that they play, I still, like, even if, like, let's say they get dropped against Illinois next week, they manage to beat Gonzaga in Vegas, but then lose it. They go 1-2 at the Players Era. I still if they can beat Clemson, not have an issue with UNLV. They already have the win at St. John's. I'd still probably overall consider Alabama to be like top 15 caliber. The schedule is just a beast. So just keep an eye on that as we turn ahead with the Tide there. They are about to endure the toughest November of any team in the country. 2 notes, then we can get to the Final Four in one. That Akron game on Sunday for Purdue. Painter's going for win 500 in his career. Akron's actually a viable team out of the MAC, but we expect Purdue to win there. And then real-time results from the poll. Next 5 years, who would you rather have running your program? Now, I think we have some Purdue enthusiasm in the chat a day after a win. That typically happens, so maybe we got a little slant there. 83% say Painter over Oates for the next 5 seasons. If you took that to the open market in college basketball, be interesting. They'd be very competitive. Nate Oates is viewed. Alabama fans know they have a really, really good one there, and they hope that they can hold on to him for another 20 years. But if any coach was able to be put on the market right now, I think Oates and Painter would, and Oates probably would even command even more because he's a little bit younger there. But the chat says 83% for Painter. Look at that. Purdue getting a little bit of love. I know the Boiler fans in the chat are maybe tilting the results of that just a bit.